Hello, hello, hello. I am your host, Tracy Otsuka. Thank you so much for joining me here for yet another episode of ADHD for Smartass Women. You know, my purpose is always to show you who you are and then inspire you to be it. And in the thousands of ADHD women that I've had the privilege of meeting, I've never met not one, that wasn't truly brilliant at something. So, of course, I am just delighted to introduce you to Justine Glaser. Justine Glaser is a creative force who doesn't just hear music, she sees it. Diagnosed with ADHD at age 3 and born with synesthesia, did I get it right?
Yes.
A rare neurological trait where for Justine, sound shows up as color. Justine has always experienced the world differently. Instead of masking it, however, she has made it her superpower. As the founder of Blue Midnight Music and Colors by Midnight, Justine blends color theory, fashion design, and visual art into work that's bold, multisensory, and completely original. Justine has spent decades crafting environments and businesses that don't just accommodate her neurodivergent brain, they celebrate and amplify its unique gifts. Her creative process isn't linear, it's layered, textured, and rooted in how her brain naturally works. Welcome, Justine. And did I get that whole mouthful right?
That was the most incredible introduction I have ever heard. That is so cool. It literally just summed up everything that I've done with my life's work. And thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And so when you hear it, are you like, oh my gosh, that's me? I did all that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I don't think of myself as someone who did all of these things. I think of myself as someone who just really loves to create and make new things. And when I do something, I get fully kind of engrossed into it. It's kind of a thing that I do. When I write songs, I kind of obsess about lyrics or I obsess about a melody. There really is no process to when I've written my songs, but then when I make color for people, there's no process to that other than just understanding the person that's in front of me. And I would also say this is where my synesthesia comes in because when I make color palettes for people, I'm listening to their voices. Their voices produce a range of colors that are them. I describe color as like a second skin because it's all about where it comes from, and it comes from our inherent sense of self.
Wow. Okay. Before we get into that, because I really want to get into that, what we always do here is we talk about our ADHD diagnosis first, because I think just, for the audience and our listeners, it's so much easier to kind of relate to someone when we understand something about their background. So, would that be okay that we talk about your ADHD diagnosis first? Because I know, obviously, it was really young, especially for a girl. So,
Yes.
what were the circumstances? How did you end up getting diagnosed at 3?
I think it was 3 years old. I'm not 100% sure. I think my mom would know that answer better than I would. But
It was young.
it was very young. And what I do know is that I used to run out of the house and I had a babysitter. And my mom told me the babysitter I had lost a lot of weight chasing me around because I was that hyperactive, I guess. And then I was creative too. Like I remember being told that I drew on someone's house, like the front of their house. I guess I did that. I was very little when I did it, but I guess I saw someone's house as my first canvas.
So, okay, explain a little bit about what you were like. It sounds like you were rambunctious, you were creative, you were clearly very physically active. And
Yes.
is that what led to the diagnoses that was your mom like, there's something wrong here? This is not how normal 3-year-olds act?
My mom's a psychiatrist, so I'm sure she spotted it early. But what I would also say is that I kind of was just very creative and very curious about things. Like I had this curiosity, or I don't know, I wouldn't call myself like oppositional, but when someone would tell me to do something, I would ask why. But it wasn't, and I don't think it was like from an oppositional place. It's because I genuinely wanted to know why I was supposed to do this thing. And then, I would do it, but I always like knowing why I have to do things.
I know you live in Los Angeles now. Did you grow up in Los
I
Angeles?
did. I'm born and raised.
Okay. So at least the weather was warm and you were running around outside a lot. And
I certainly was, yes.
what happened when you went to school? Was that easy for you or?
Definitely not. I actually would say that the K through 12 system was very broken for me. I think the number one issue that neurodivergent people face, and I don't think this is talked about enough, but I think the biggest issue, it wasn't academics for me, although I had learning issues. It was bullying. I was bullied from the time that I was 8 years old until the time I was 15 or 16. And kids were really mean to me. It was very cruel. It was actually very devastating and heartbreaking. And I think that a lot of ADHD people have RSD. And at the time when I was going through school, they didn't know anything about RSD. But now that we do, I'm like, oh my God, this was me. And kids were really mean. And what I would say is that my life instantly got better when I left school. The moment I left school, I felt freedom. It was really just a hard time in my life. It was hard for me to sit there every day and take the bullying. I actually, in my, I want to say mid 20s, I got a complex PTSD diagnosis. It's just like school can be so damaging. And it can be damaging, painful, and painful in so many ways, because sitting in a classroom was definitely not for me. I think I was that kid that, I'll tell you something. When I was in elementary school, I would forget my homework. Then I would be on the phone, use the home phone, because back then we used home phones. And I would remember calling a kid in my class and the parent picking up, and I would say, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, I'm really sorry, but I forgot my homework, and can so-and-so fax it over? And so I was just that kid that forgot their homework. I drew on tests. I drew on my homework. And I would say it made me a very good visual artist, but I don't think my teachers appreciated it.
So, Justine, what were you bullied so, excessively for?
I think the traits that I had, my neurodivergent traits, I think, everyone says it's so hard to get a diagnosis, but I think bullies pick it out in 28 seconds. And what I also think is that I did a little research on this because I sometimes go off on these little research tangents. And there are countries in Europe that teach kindness and compassion in schools. And it makes me wonder why we don't teach it here. And I think part of the reason why I'm coming on these podcasts and talking about my neurodivergence is because I really want to put a stop to bullying. It's really damaging. The consequences are horrible. And schools don't do enough.
Well, and the truth of the matter is, in my experience, being the mother of two grown kids now, the kids that did the bullying always had parents that were also bullies.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't remember, the kindest children had the kindest parents. I mean, it was just literally that simple. And I think that a lot of the kids that were doing the bullying at school were being bullied at home, whether by siblings or their own parents. So it's learned behavior. I don't think, kids come out of the womb bullying.
No, I don't think so either.
Okay, but I want to go a little bit deeper into this. So when you say your neurodivergent traits, that's what you think you were being bullied for. Can you be more specific? Are you talking about the fact that maybe you asked too many questions, you were too curious?
I was very quirky as a girl, and I wear the color blue every day, and kids pick that out. And I also think that I was kind of inattentive in class, and so when I would space out and the teacher would call on me, kids would laugh. And I think I also think that I'm very nice, and I think girls just saw that as a way as a way in. Most of the bullying I got were from girls, and it makes me sad because I don't believe women should put other women down or girls should put other girls down because it's so tough out there and we should all stick together. But yeah, the bullying I got was from girls. I didn't really get bullying from boys. And I would actually say that I have a lot of male friends in elementary school and middle school because it was more comfortable.
Which probably got you bullied more by the girls.
Maybe it did, I don't know, but I think what it is that kids don't understand different.
Yeah. Well, society doesn't understand different.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, the whole goal of society is to keep people in the same little box, and heaven forbid, especially if you're a woman, that you jump out of that box.
Right, right.
It's not appreciated at all. So, what happened after school, like after high school?
Yeah, well, it's so after high school, I went on and I did a year of musical theater school. And
Still in LA?
no, not in LA, in New Mexico.
Okay.
And after high school, it was really cool because I finally got to be very creative. I started singing at bars. I started singing at bars, playing open mic nights, and I did a year of musical theater school, and then I transferred to design school, and so I have my bachelor's in fashion design. But when I was getting my bachelor's in fashion design, I was also performing at night. And it was really cool because I had this negative feeling about school, but when I got to school that was like creative and art school, that really suited my brain because it was project based. There were less tests. I did struggle in the general ed classes like biology. Not that I use it today. I don't use biology to this day. But yeah, I would say overall, art school was a better choice for me than had I gone to a typical college.
And did you find that the other students were kind of just like you?
Yeah, I would say like definitely. I think being able to pick my friends as an adult was a huge thing because I feel like I'm just surrounded by a tribe, I would say. I feel like in life you have to find your tribe, your people, and so everyone that was like creative and quirky, and I have so many wonderful friends that are also creative and quirky, whether they're neurodivergent or not, but there's just that understanding that we all think differently and we're creative. So I love my friends that I have as an adult because I think we built friendships in this really solid way. And I also think having amazing friends, it's life-saving because you have people in your life that see you.
Exactly, exactly. So I'm curious, when did you discover that you could sing?
At a young age, I was composing music by the time I was 12 years old. And what I say about that is I started playing the piano when I was 8 years old. I had lessons, but then 4 years into my lessons, I started realizing that I could arrange things how I wanted to arrange them. And then the synesthesia came out because the way I describe composing or the way that I compose, I can't speak for other composers, but for me it's like painting. It's like painting a landscape. Whenever I make music, it's like I'm painting a landscape because I try to be very thoughtful about how all the notes float together. And what I say about music too is music, someone who mentored me in music really said this and it stuck with me, but music is sometimes the space between the notes. It's not the actual notes. It's sometimes the space between the notes. So for me, my music is a story and it's a painting. I'm a very visual thinker.
Were you actually practicing music, learning music, singing from the time you were a child, or was this something that you really just got into once you got to college?
No, I've been doing it since I was a child. I think the first piece I ever composed was when I was 12 years old, and it was like a very short 30-second score. My actual I when I was 12, I wanted to be a film composer because I love movies, and And also, I was very inspired by my grandfather who passed away at 97, but he lived a really amazing life. He was an incredible person in my life, and he played the jazz piano. He played jazz piano. So I was always very intrigued by what he was doing. And then when I got into it myself, I didn't do jazz, but I went my own other genre. But the way he was with jazz is kind of the way I am with alternative music.
It sounds like everything kind of came together once you got out of high school.
It did. It all came together.
If you were actually performing and really in music as a child, or did that really come in college and that's part of your soul, as part of the essence of who you are, and so you weren't you weren't really being that person because is that it?
So what I would say is I performed, so I had performance experience. I started performing in plays when I was a teenager and did a lot of musical theater. I even made costumes for all my school plays, but it's interesting because I didn't think of myself as a serious performer until I left school.
Left high school?
Yeah, left high school. Left high school. I really got interested in performing more when I got to those college years. Yeah.
You just made me remember something. So my daughter was really into music. She's a jazz vocalist, and she's in her third year, going into her third year of law school. She's going to go into entertainment law, and in her high school years, she performed a lot. And we were in LA a lot at showcases for major record labels. And she went to a more alternative progressive high school. It's a very highly regarded school, but it was very balanced in terms of pretty much everyone that was there was either a super athlete or a super performer, either a theater kid or, really good at music, or they all had something that was their thing. And so she did a lot of performing in high school. She was not bullied at all for it. It was actually seen as, oh, that's her thing. She's really good at that. Versus, I remember meeting a lot of other kids down in LA who were going through something similar of, as far as what Atea was going through. And those kids were not at schools like Tea's Branson High School. They were at, more of your larger public schools, and they were bullied mercilessly for the fact that they were performing. There were videos, they were in LA, I am wondering if it's, these big public schools where, and I know in LA, there are big public high schools that are focused on the arts. And so and New York City too, there's probably, and other parts of the country, there's probably a lot of kids that, like you said, are a little bit more quirky, a little bit more interesting. They're not, your vanilla type kid.
Yeah.
And so it's more accepted versus in other places, no. If you stand out, you're going to get smashed down,
Yeah, well, I was not in the LA public school systems. I was in smaller private schools that they weren't, I don't think the focus was for creativity. And I think, I don't know. The way I see it is I just think I was a person that was never meant to be in school.
Just wasn't but that's not really true because then you went on.
Yeah. I went on to art school. I think like normal school, I probably wasn't meant for, but art school, sure. Yeah.
Well, and if you think about, school as we're talking about, it hasn't changed in 150 years.
No.
And the whole goal of school is not to develop a creative, curious human being. No, it's to develop a yes person who can go into a factory and just do the same thing, right? Every day and never question anything. So
Yeah.
it makes sense. So you said something that I just loved, and I think it relates to your synesthesia. Let's start with tell us what synesthesia is.
Yeah, so synesthesia, it's kind of a different way to I describe it as a different way to experience something. So your brain associates something sensory with it could be something physical. So and I don't know if I'm defining it very well, but my version of synesthesia is color to sound, also known as chromesthesia. And so when every note that is played on a piano is a color, and even sounds like a door opening, that's a color. And that's just the type of synesthesia that I have. There are people who have it with numbers and colors. I've heard someone say that the number 2 is the color blue. I don't have that kind of synesthesia. Mine is color and sound exclusively.
I went and did a little synesthesia research because I found it so incredibly fascinating. I had a sense of what it was, but I didn't realize at all, like, what it all can encompass. So, synesthesia is a neurological trait where stimulation of one sense automatically triggers another. And so, as you said, the common types are chromesthesia, which is the kind you have, where hearing sounds triggers colors. But there's a grapheme color where letters or numbers appear in specific colors. That's what you were talking about. This is interesting. There's a lexical gustatory synesthesia. Words trigger taste sensations.
Yes.
Wow. There's the number form where numbers appear as mental maps. So it's when someone automatically sees numbers arranged in a specific mental map or shape, like a built-in number line in their head. So instead of just thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, they might see the numbers moving in a curve, a spiral, or a zigzag across the space. This is what's so interesting, though. It's not something they choose. It just happens every time they think about numbers, and the layout is usually the same their whole life. So it's
Yes.
like their brain stores math on a 3D roadmap. And I'm curious if people who have that form of synesthesia, are they brilliant at numbers? I didn't research that far, but now I'm really curious about that. And then the final one that I saw was mirror touch. So this one sounds creepy. So you feel a touch when you see someone else touched.
Yeah.
One of the things that you said at the beginning of the podcast, which I was just amazed by, is that you said that color is an inherent sense of self for you.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah. So in my work with building color palettes for people, what I look at and I listen to their voices, but what I say about it is every palette I make, I really make it so it feels like the person in front of me. Because there are a lot of different ways to make palettes for people, but the way I do it is I really try to see the person in front of me and make sure that people feel seen. Because my belief is that the colors we have in our DNA and in our personality, they're fundamental to who we are. And also from a logical sense, you're not going to take a person who is very shy and put them in a neon bright yellow. They just wouldn't wear it. It wouldn't compute. So when you're making a color palette for a person, you have to be very thoughtful about what you pull and what you choose because it's a very vulnerable experience for the person in front of me. So I always like to make sure that they're supported and they're guided, and then they take home something that they actually feel like is them. It's them. And also color palettes are like telling a story. So what I'm doing is I'm assembling the story of them. I'm assembling who they are in color, and I'm excited because I am currently working on a book about color and about my work with color. And it's so interesting to me because it's all about how people are. It's their walk, it's their voice, it's how they greet me at the door when I let them in for their session. And then if I'm working with them over Zoom, how they greet me over Zoom. And there's so much psychology behind color. And that's what I really try to do in my work. I try to bring it out. I try to bring people out of their shells, and I try to encourage people to really be themselves. And you can do that through color because it's a way of communication. On my color palettes, there's different levels of colors. So there are high energy colors, which is your boldest and your brightest. So if you're feeling like I'm empowered today and I want to show it, you wear these bold and bright colors. But if you're if you're going into a more intimate setting, then maybe you want to wear your lower energy colors on the palette, which are your more peaceful colors, because they promote tranquility and peace and harmony. So, what I try to show people is that this is your palette and you can use it however you want. And it's a really great way to express yourself.
You know, what you're saying, I just find so fascinating. And so I'm thinking of all these stories in my head. And I'm curious, do you think that this whole idea of color and your colors, your palette, is this something you're born with?
It is. It's something you're born with because what I always say is my palettes are 50% nature and 50% nurture. And so nature and nurture come together and they make the palette. But the 50% of you that is nature, that's your DNA. That's your hair, your skin, your eyes, and all of the colors that go with your DNA. But then the energy colors are about what enhances your aura, what enhances your energy, what enhances you, and the things you would choose for yourself. So these palettes are really like a full story and a full spectrum.
Is this different than what they used to do in the 80s, probably before you were born, where you could go get your colors done?
Oh yeah, so color analysis in the 80s is it's actually very simplified. My method comes from the 1940s and it was created by a woman named Suzanne Cagle.
Oh, yeah.
And she has an interesting kind of story because she was a milliner and a nightclub singer. So by day she was making hats and then at night she was singing in nightclubs. But what she noticed when she was making hats is that some colors of hats would really bring out people's faces and then other colors maybe would drag them down. So that's kind of how she invented color analysis as a whole. But the way she did it was by building palettes and not the way that it was done in the 80s where they take fabric and they hold it up to you and if it looks good then maybe it's right. But her methodology, it's very specific. And that's what I try to do with my palettes. My palettes are very specific. I have never made the same palette twice, even for identical twins.
I love the color yellow, like in every way. I used to have a yellow house. It's now white because I got sick of all the yellow. And it couldn't actually be the bright yellow that I liked. And I remember as a small child, I grew up in the 70s, and we used to always have those happy faces, and they were on everything. You'd go to the gas station and you could get glasses with the happy face on it if you bought a certain amount of gas. You'd go into the store and everybody had these white bags with "Have a nice day" with the happy face on it. And I still to this day, I love that. When I was 14, I bought my first suit. Now, most kids at 14, first of all, don't buy a suit, and I was working, and so I paid for it. But and most people who buy a suit don't buy a bright yellow suit. But I somehow found a yellow suit. It wasn't as garish as like Jim Carrey's in The Mask. I think that was the movie. But it was, it wasn't a pale yellow suit. And then I used to sew a lot. And I still remember, the fabrics that I liked. And the fabrics that I like, I now see in linens, and I'm like buying the same kind of a look. Um, and so it makes so much sense to me that actually these desires, what you're attracted to, that it would be something that you're born with. And you kind of always go back to them too, right? So there were times like the 90s, everybody was wearing all black. That was like that Calvin Klein look. And I was a lawyer, and so I was in all black. And today, I never wear all black. I mean, if I had to go to a funeral, I'm not sure that I have anything that's all black, but I do feel very comfortable in bright colors, but not all the time. I kind of agree with you. I feel like there's a place for it. I mean, if I'm really casual, I'm probably not in really bright colors. But anyway, okay, that's so fascinating. So I'm curious then, you must believe that your synesthesia shaped your creativity.
It absolutely did because it's kind of like you can't have one thing without the other. It's kind like the way I put it is I don't think I would have put out the work I've put out if I didn't have synesthesia. They're just kind of I call synesthesia like a lifelong companion. It's just it's always there. And it shapes my work whether it's conscious or subconscious. It's just always there.
Do you know any other, popular musical artists who also share this characteristic where when there's sound, they see color?
Yeah, a lot of artists have it. A lot of really great musicians have synesthesia. I think I read somewhere, and I don't want to outright say this person certainly has it because I'm not 100% sure. I've just seen it somewhere. I think Pharrell Williams might have it, and I saw somewhere that
Mm,
Lord has it, but
you know what? You have a Lord vibe. Absolutely, I totally see that because she, like you, is so multisensory. She blends music and visual art and style, and, I went on your website, I listened to your music, I saw some of you moving around, and who you are on stage is so different than who you show up with here with us today. I mean, you are a character. You are larger than life.
it's a character. It is. It's 100% a character. And what I say too is it's funny because doing interviews and performing on stage, you might think that they are similar, but they are actually very two different skill sets. Because when I'm on stage, I am not Justine Glaser. I am Blue Midnight. I am a completely separate character. I'm a character. And when I come off stage, I'm back to me again. It's very funny because I think what sometimes happens is I'll meet someone and they might expect me to be a little larger than life, but maybe that's not the case when they meet me. I'm more pulled back. It's really two different things. It's
You're so sweet. You're just so sweet and quite gentle and even the sound of your voice versus as an artist up there on stage, again, you're just so big. Yet I have this sense about you. Nothing feels like you give a fig about trying to fit in.
no, I don't. And maybe because it's I'm turning 30 this year, but there's just something about me turning 30 this year that caused a switch to flip, and it's like I don't care. I don't care, and I'm not going to try, and I just need to be me, and I'm going to live my life as me. And I think that nowadays I really consider authenticity as one of my values. One of my core values is authenticity and showing up as you are, showing up as yourself, and living in your truth.
And so when you started performing, was it hard for you to step into that character or did it feel really natural?
It was hard at first because I didn't know what I was doing. I got into the music business really young, and so I didn't really know what I was doing. And all I know is that I just wanted to dress up in costumes and perform. But I didn't know what I was doing. It took me a long time to kind of hone in on the message and hone in on the act. And actually a lot of the songs on my first album, it's when I look back at my work, I think about it as like a moment in time or like a stamp on history, but a lot of the songs I wrote when I was on my first album, I wrote on post-it notes. I did. Because I would think of lyrics and it would be so, and I didn't want to forget them. So I would just write them on post-it notes and then find them later. But a lot of what I wrote for my first album was on post-it notes, and it was very scattered. And I would also say that I've I've worked with the same musicians in my band. Like I hire my musicians. I'm a solo act, but I work with the same guys over and over because I just love working with them. And I also think they helped support me on stage because we built a rapport. We did. And it was so cool. And I think going on stage with a band really helped me get over that initial stage fright because I knew that they were there to support me. And so I felt safe knowing that there were guys on stage with me that knew what they were doing because I for sure did not. And at the time. And then I got more confident and I grew into myself. And then the act got more attention. And you know, I think it was kind of an evolution of me as a person. I think the performance thing came when I gradually got more confident in myself.
So you got more confident, which means that you could be more of who you are. And then it became a cycle that, brought more confidence. And then you became even more of who you are. And it just kind of grows like that.
Yeah, it's a cycle. When you invest in yourself and you grow your own confidence, you put out that confidence and people are attracted to it. And then it comes back. It's really fundamental. It's kind of just the law of attraction.
It's so true. Like attracts like, right?
Yeah.
So you work across music, fashion, color theory, visual art. Do you think ADHD makes it easier or harder to blend so many disciplines?
Easier because I don't think I could take on the amount of projects I take on if I wasn't ADHD. It gets me so excited about things and it also makes me see the big picture in a way that I think I wouldn't if I didn't have ADHD. And it makes me see this big picture of like where I want this thing to go or how I want this thing to go. And I'm also very particular about my work. So I before I put it out, I pick at it. I don't put something out unless I feel it's absolutely right to be put out. And I think my ADHD kind of makes me creative and it gives me that hyper focus on each thing that I otherwise wouldn't have had. And I also think that ADHD, it kind of makes me think outside of the box. I don't think I would have come up with the lyrics I came up with if I didn't have ADHD because I'm just like throwing around words in my head and then all of a sudden something clicks. And I also would say that it's the same thing with color. ADHD kind of makes me experiment with different things or maybe break a rule. Like there's a lot of, when I went to school to do palette building, there were a lot of rules, but I feel like the ADHD makes me get creative with a color or interact with it in a way that really suits the person that otherwise wouldn't be there if I was following rules.
So, a lot of ADHD women think they have to narrow down to be successful. And frankly, we're just taught that in general, right?
Yeah,
You've done the opposite.
I did.
Has that ever felt risky?
I'm sure I've had days where I'm like, what am I doing? Maybe I should go get a 9 to 5. I'm sure I've had those days in the beginning. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't. I'm very grateful that I have the creative brain I have. And I mean, ADHD can be really hard. Like I struggle with executive dysfunction. I do. And I can be very disorganized and I own up to that. But I think if I just had to focus on one thing, it would limit my possibilities because my brain is just meant to go in different directions and it's meant to explore all of these directions. And so I think telling people to narrow down, telling people to focus, I think that's kind of a myth. I think it's a myth to keep people in capitalism. And I think that you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And I would also say that it's made me just a very open-minded person. I think that ADHD makes me very open-minded because I don't feel like I have room to judge anybody for what they decide to do. Because who am I to tell someone what they should or shouldn't do? I have a very scattered brain. I don't know. It makes me a very less judgmental person. And I also think that it makes me open minded to the fact that there are so many paths to success, and you don't have to follow just one path. You could follow many paths. It's endless. And I think what I want ADHD women to know is that the opportunities are endless if you focus on your strengths.
So, when you're overwhelmed or distracted, what's your go-to strategy to get back to creativity or flow? Like just to get the crap done that you need to get done so that you can be doing the things that you really want to be doing.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I'm someone that likes to reconnect to nature. And so I live in an area of LA that's more in nature. And I really love that for me because when I feel just like cooped up or overwhelmed, or maybe my mind's just jumbled and I can't straighten it out, it happens. It happens to the best of us. I just take a step outside and I just sit in my backyard, and it's kind of like meditation. Although I don't like to call it meditation because I feel like meditation is not something everyone can realistically do.
Well, we can. We just have to do it our way,
We
right?
just have to do it our way. I would say like going to a traditional meditation class might not be for everyone, but I just go outside and I sit and I just breathe. And maybe after 45 minutes I come back to it. But what I do is I give myself the permission to take breaks.
No, that makes perfect sense. And we have this idea, many of us, that it's almost like you need permission to take those breaks. You have to do this thing before you can take this break. And really, it's backwards. You take the break, you can do the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, and it's so ingrained in us when we're young. Like we have to finish this task before we can do this. Like you have to do your homework before you can play outside. And for people with ADHD, it's not that simple. It's not that simple of we have to do our homework and then we can play outside. It's you have a lot of pent up energy. Maybe you're at school and you're masking all day, so you need to let it out when you're home. It's not as simple as like you go to school, you transition, you do your homework, and then you go play outside. It's not that simple for ADHD.
So I'm curious, having a mom who is a psychiatrist, was that helpful or hindering for your ADHD brain, or both?
You know, I think my mom being a psychiatrist, that's an interesting question. I think first of all, she's a mom, so I think like all moms, they do their best, and no mom is perfect, but I think she did an amazing job. I do think maybe some of my ideas have caught her off guard a bit. I don't think she imagined having a kid that would join a band. I don't think she imagined that. Or maybe she did. I mean, she was cool about it. She would bring us when we would rehearse. She would actually bring us food at the rehearsal. So maybe she came around, but I think definitely. I think what I'll say about it is that I made it more exciting for my parents. I think I made it more exciting for my parents. I might be the reason they have gray hair.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a brother.
And did your brother follow the same creative path or
Not
did
at all. No. My brother is very bright and very linear. Like I did my ACT to get into college. I fell asleep during mine.
Oh my gosh.
It was, you know what? It was early in the morning. The temperature in the classroom was like just right, and I dozed off. And then, you know, after I did the ACT, I told my mom I'm going to art school. but but my brother's test scores doubled, maybe even tripled mine.
Oh god.
And he's so like linear, and he's so gifted in school. So funny how the genetics just got flipped around. And then I had a sister, and she was like a fusion of both of us. She was creative, but then also very linear too. Like she was creative like me, but a good student.
Ah.
And
Don't you think,
but
though, you could
yeah,
have been a really strong student if school was set up differently?
probably. I think that, and it's not like my grades were terrible. I passed. It was kind of one of those things where C's, they get degrees. But yeah, I would say that and it was funny when I was applying to art school, I was like, they better like my portfolio because they are not going to like the scores or the grades.
I think they know better.
But you would think. And so I think it's one of those things where I think I could have thrived in school if it was more interactive, if I didn't just have to sit at a desk, if like I had this fourth grade teacher that I loved. He was the best teacher I ever had. And we did a study of like the California missions and Native Americans and their culture. And what he did was he made it so fun and interactive because he put up like an authentic teepee in the middle of the classroom, and he led us through different like rituals and initiations and really educated us about the culture. And I was just so engaged. And I really wish that school, we made it more engaging and more interactive and maybe less tests and more projects. And
We need more ADHD teachers.
we do. We need more ADHD
I
teachers.
say it all the time that ADHD children are the best, indicators of good teaching,
Yeah.
because I think all of us have had a teacher like that just really stood out from all of the other teachers that we kind of suffered through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying that I had bad teachers because I really respect all of my teachers for everything that they did or tried to do. And I think what happens is teachers are not given the credit they deserve.
Well, and they're not given the latitude, right? They are taught that this is how you have to teach. And okay, I get that maybe that works for 80% of brains, but I don't think it works well for 80% of brains. There are better methods where everybody could learn, in a much easier fashion. So, Justine, if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing about being creative and neurodivergent, what would it be?
I think I would say don't change. Don't change for anybody. Don't change. Because I would also say you're not too much because you're not too much because you're navigating a system that gives too little.
So, do you have a number one ADHD workaround that you rely on most days?
It's funny. Sometimes I'll do this to remind myself that I have something. It's kind of funny, but one of the hacks that I used to do was I would take a post-it note, write it down, and then I would put it in my shoe. And that way when it bothered me, I would take it out and remember what it was.
Yeah. That's actually the most creative. That hack, and someone came on a couple weeks ago and they said that if there's something that you need to get done and you're going to forget, like let's say you've got to take out the laundry, but first you need to go to the stove and turn the water down, you raise your hand and you keep your hand up until you go to the laundry because you will remember, right? If your hand is up. And I thought that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard, but then I tried it and it works.
I watch a lot of neurodivergent content creators out there, and they are brilliant and also very interesting.
Yeah, no, but I like the post-it note in the shoe. You just can't be wearing like a slide or an open.
No, this was when I had sneakers and or boots or like a closed-toed shoe. Don't do this with flip-flops. It'll get lost.
Won't work. So, Justine, are you working on something that you want to tell us about? Where can people find you? All of the things.
Okay, so right now I am writing a book about my work on color, and I'm very excited. It's the second draft is complete. I also am writing a new something new for music. It's very much in its kind of beginning stages where I'm just drafting lyrics right now, but something new musically is coming. And You can find all of those things on my various websites. For my colors, I have colorsbymidnight.com. And then for my music, it's bluemidnightmusic.com. And the other thing that I'm doing is I am also going to start mentoring neurodivergent women. I'm getting my certificate to become an ADHD and autism coach.
Uh-huh.
And so I plan to take on a handful of people starting in March. It's my way of giving back.
I love that. So, Justine, are you also on the autism spectrum?
I am. I think I have more ADHD symptoms than ASD symptoms because I took a test to see, like one of those self assessment quizzes. I love self assessment quizzes, they're really entertaining. But I took one for ADHD and I scored like through the roof. I think it was like 9 out of 10 or maybe even 10 out of 10. But then for ASD, I took it and it came up as around a 5 out of 10, kind of in that window. So I think that I'm on both. I have both, and they both are parts of me. But I think ADHD is a little more dominant in my day to day life. And then I think synesthesia also plays into that equation. So, yeah.
Well, and I almost wonder, hypersensitivities, are even more pronounced with autism, and so I'm curious if more, I'll say women, just because that's who we talk to and work with, if more women that are have autism also have synesthesia.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There is a higher rate of neurodivergent people in general getting synesthesia, but
Yeah.
I don't know if the two are like mutually hand in hand. I think it increases your chances. And then there's a lot of people who don't have anything that get synesthesia. So I think there's no formula, but I do think if you're neurodivergent, you have a higher chance of having synesthesia or synesthetic abilities.
So, what is the autism trait that you really relate to?
I think the when I get interested in something, it's all I can talk about.
Okay. And it's long term. It's not like ADHD where, oh, this, that.
I get these very long-term interests for sure. And when I'm a fan of something, I'm a fan of it for life.
Yep. That sounds a little bit more like autism than ADHD. Well, Justine, all of your links will be in the show notes. And I just wanted to thank you so much for spending time with us here today and talking about your life, your ADHD story.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So that's what I have for you for this week. If you like this episode with Justine, please let us know by leaving a review. Our goal is to change the conversation around ADHD, helping as many women as we possibly can learn how their ADHD brains work so that they too may discover their amazing strengths. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next week.